Good day, everyone. This is JAD 104, Science, Technology, and Society. We are the 10th group of A20, and today we will be learning about Karl Marx. Let us first introduce Karl Marx himself before we go on to his contribution to intellectual revolution during his time. By the way, who is Karl Marx? Mr. Talorin, could you please give us a brief introduction?
Thank you, Ms. Zoleta. So, Karl Marx lived from 1818 to 1883, is often treated as a revolutionary and an activist rather than a philosopher, whose works inspired the foundation of many communist regimes in the 20th century. It is certainly hard to find many thinkers who can be said to have had comparable influence in the creation of the modern world. However, Marx was trained as a philosopher, and although often portrayed as a moving away from philosophy in his mid-20s, perhaps towards history and the social sciences, there are many points of contact with modern philosophical debates throughout his writings.
Thank you for those great information, Mr. Talorin. How about what is the intellectual revolution all about? Could you please lead us through?
Of course, Miss Zoleta, well, over half of his adult life, from late 1849 until his death in 1883, Karl Marx lived in London, a city providing a secure haven for political exiles and a superb vantage point from which to study the world's most advanced capitalist economy. The third and the longest exile was dominated by an intellectual and personal struggle to complete his critique of political economy. But his theoretical output rather extended far beyond that project. Moreover, Karl Marx's later years after the Paris Commune are the topic of intense serious debate. His inability to complete the final volumes of Capital is sometimes viewed as symptomatic of a larger and more systematic intellectual failure. Others, on the other hand, have emphasized Marx's continuous intellectual revolutionary during this era, as he rethought his ideas on the core and periphery of the world economic system, the extent of his theory of history, social anthropology, and Russia's economic and political progress. That's it for me, and that for question. And for the next question, who are the key figures in in the revolution? Mr. Villamater, could you please enlighten us?
Of course. So after Marx got his degree, he began working for the liberal democratic journal Rheinische Zeitung and eventually became the article editor in 1842. The Prussian government outlawed the form as being too radical the following year. Marx moved to Paris in 1843 with his new wife, Jenny von Westphalen. Marx met Friedrich Engels in Paris, a fellow German emigre who would become a longtime collaborator and friend. In 1845, Engels and Marx wrote The Holy Father, a critique of Bauer's young Hegelian ideology. Then Marx and Engels had moved to Brussels, Belgium, where Marx renounced his Prussian citizenship after the Prussian authorities interfered with having Marx removed from France. Marx and Engels were drafted by the newly formed Communist League in London and England in 1847 to write the Communist Manifesto, which was published the following year. The two philosophers portrayed history as a series of class battles, and they projected that the approaching proletariat revolution would overthrow the capitalist system for good, making workers the world's new ruling class.
That's very well put, Mr. Villamater. For the follow-up question, how did the revolution advance modern science and scientific thinking of the time.
According to Karl Marx, science is a major force in developing the economy and the theory used to describe it. In a speech commemorating the 1848 revolution, Marx underlined the importance of scientific development, which is Marx's idea of scientific growth is similar to Thomas Kuhn's popularized analysis. Science, according to Kuhn, is a process of establishing and then discarding a series of mutually incompatible paradigms. One paradigm is as good as the next as long as it proceeds beneficial outcomes. So that's it for me. Now, Ms. Rinoa will answer the question, what controversies met the revolution?
Karl Marx was revered as one of the most influential thinkers. He was a brilliant German philosopher, economist, and journalist with a flair for political theories and socialist revolutionaries. He was rather famous for his The Communist Manifesto, which later evolved to form the basis of Marxism. Having developed socialist ideas from studying the works of Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, he began his revolutionary writing, which contemporaries later labeled as controversial due to its statement of capitalist profit earned towards the exploitation of workers, thus attacking the status quo and questioning the legitimacy of capitalism. His book, The Civil War in France, also sparked violent revolutions across Europe. His intention towards publishing this book was to establish a form of support for revolutionaries. However, this also became the reason for the rejection of his application for British citizenship. So that will be all for the discussion regarding the controversies met in the revolution. Ms. Daleta, could you tell us about how Karl Marx made an impact to society?
Sure, Ms. Villegas. Marx's ideas and himself as one of history's greatest thinkers have vastly impacted our society today, even though he remains a controversial figure. Marx's outstanding contribution to our society is his theories about capitalism and communism. His ideas significantly impacted society, influencing the fields of sociology, political economy, and strands of heterodox economics. Marx has become the foundation of several leaders globally, such as Vladimir Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro. He provided a revolutionary critique of Das Kapital, which is about the understanding of capitalism as a social and economic system. Also, one of his famous works is the Communist Manifesto, collaborated with Engels, was made that concludes about the nature of society and politics, and an attempt to explain Marxism's goals and later socialism. It was eventually considered one of the world's most influential and valuable political manuscripts that incites the society today, and the recurrent wars and repeated economic crisis we are experiencing.
Thank you for sharing that information with us. Ms. Daleta, what about the practical application today of Karl Marx's contribution to science? Can you share them with us?
Karl Marx's philosophy continues its relevance until today. According to Engels' speech in Marx's Gravesides during 1883, Marx's immense achievements were to make two scientific discoveries that transform our understanding of the social system. We have first the theory of historical materialism. Just as Darwin discovered the law of organic nature, so Marx discovered the law of development of history. And second is the theory of surplus value. Marx also discovered the special law of motion governing the present day capitalist mode of production. In both theory and practice, he was able to influence beyond measure. Marx's philosophy has become the foundation of understanding many aspects of the current world that people would not grasp without him. His significant theories raise important philosophical questions about man and his hopes and aspirations, about society and history, which indeed inspire his readers and provides food for further thought. Marx also provided scientific, practical solutions to the question he raised. Many problems remain to exist today, and we have to go back to Marx to understand the nature of the problems. That concludes our discussion about Karl Marx. We hope you learn a lot, keep safe, and have a great day.